Aloha and welcome. Welcome to Think Tech, where we're raising public awareness about a range of things, from globalism, technology and energy, as well as diversification, a whole range of things. And as part of the Think Tech series, today, this is Global Connections, and I'm your host, Carlos Juarez. I'm delighted to welcome a group of young Danish, well, we'll call them young Danes for now, and they are here in Hawaii as part of a cross-cultural exchange, a part of a Pacific Crossroads program, connecting them here and going through. We're going to learn a lot about what they're doing, but basically an opportunity to hear some reflections, some impressions, learn a little bit about their perspective on the world and what coming to Hawaii is helping them. So joining me today, I'll turn to them in a moment, but I want to just remind our listeners first that we broadcast live on the internet at 2 and at 4 every weekday, and all of our shows are streamed live on Ustream.com and Spreaker.com. And if you'd like links to our live streams or any of our previous broadcasts, you can find them all at www.thinktechhawaii.com. That's thinktechhawaii.com. If you'd like to join us here in our downtown studio gallery anytime, send a note to Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. That's J-A-Y, Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. And we're coming to you live here from Pioneer Plaza at the core of downtown Honolulu. And joining me today, I'm very glad to welcome all of you. I've got Anders in the middle here, Anders Gunderstrup, Caroline Agger-Nielsen, and Cecilie Lunau. I'm going to work on those, but I hope that's at least a quick introduction. And all three of you are from Denmark. I'm going to welcome you here to our studio and look forward to a conversation. Thank you for joining us. And perhaps if I could just ask each of you just say a brief word about yourselves. Tell us, where you come from, in Denmark, and maybe anything else you wish to share. So perhaps starting.
I'm Caroline. I'm 20 years old. I'm from the north of Copenhagen.
My name is Anders. I come from Funen, a small island in the middle of Denmark. I'm 19.
Excellent. Okay.
I'm Cecilie, and I'm 19 as well.
Okay.
And I'm from the west of Copenhagen.
Yes. And of course, Denmark, a small state, a small country in northern Europe, a little bit far from Hawaii, let's just say, the other side of the planet. And you found yourself coming here as part of a cultural exchange program. You're part of a program here in Hawaii. We have a Danish study center that brings students like you, and basically kind of in transition. You're out of high school. You're kind of getting ready for your next steps, but I'm very, just happy to learn of this opportunity. You found yourself, before coming to Hawaii for this short-term program, you also spent some time in New York City, right? And maybe just give me some quick impressions, starting with that part. You left Denmark, and you found yourself in New York. Was it a bit of a culture shock arriving there, or how is it different from your home?
Well, New York wasn't that big of a culture shock.
Okay. You've seen it in a movie.
Yeah, of course, and we talked a lot about it in class as well. That New York and Denmark were quite similar.
Yeah, and some of us have been to New York several times.
Sure.
I had an uncle who lived there, so I've been given the opportunity to go visit him. So I've been there before.
And what else? Anything you add?
Yeah, absolutely. New York is like a huge city compared even to Copenhagen, which is the biggest city in Denmark. New York is like huge and huge buildings, and so it is, for me, it was kind of a culture shock. I've never been to New York. I have been to big cities around the world, but I have never been to
and of course New York is a very cosmopolitan, worldly city. People from everywhere are arriving there, and it's a very fast-paced, dynamic, as we'll see, a very different place from where you are now here in Hawaii. We are certainly part of the same country, but again, as you're learning, our country's quite big, right? We have a lot of diversity here. But maybe tell me briefly, what is it that inspired you to get involved in this program? I mean, you could have stayed home, you could have been working, going back to school, but you made a decision to take a leap and pursue this opportunity. What was it that inspired any of you? What could you say?
Well, since I was a little girl, I always had the dream that I wanted to go to Hawaii. So when I graduated, and some years before, I just got on the internet and said, what can I do in my free year after I graduate? And then I saw a Danish study said I had this opportunity to go to Hawaii and New York and get study and stuff like that. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I didn't even look at others' trips, and so I was like, I'm going to Hawaii.
And as a young, you asked you from your childhood, was there some movie or something you read in a book or anything?
I don't know if I've seen a movie or it's
was in your mind.
I want to go to Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you
add? It has always been like a goal to kind of get around the world, and Hawaii is almost the exact opposite of Denmark compared on the globe. So going here is like the biggest step you can almost take far from home, and as a goal for my gap year was just to get far away from home somehow. Not necessarily by distance, but also by culture, and this is definitely a big step in both distance and culture. So, it's absolutely been a huge experience.
Yeah. Excellent. What could you add? Anything?
English. Because, I really wanted to come to a place where I could practice it, and
Great.
And Hawaii is perfect for that.
Well, and of course, I mean, we have our own diversity. We'll speak to some of that here, your impressions, and part of what you're learning, from that experience. I really want to commend all three of you, because you just your decisions to do something like this shows you've got some, sort of initiative to take a little risk, get out of your comfort zone. You live in today Europe, of course, a lot of mobility. Students can move easily anywhere, but coming this far is, it's not the same. It's a big different venture, and I guess what I'd like to get a sense from you, I mean, each of you are part of this society in Denmark, which we know, and maybe some of our listeners would care to hear some of your own impressions. I mean, what would you describe your country as to other people, or as you meet people here at Denmark? Well, what's it like there? Tell us, what is your own image or impression, or how do you describe it, Denmark?
I kind of feel like Denmark, mostly, maybe in the entire Scandinavia, is like, we like to think of ourselves like maybe in terms of we do things properly, and we like to think of ourselves as I don't know,
individuals.
Yeah, no, everyone's individual. But that we do things properly, and if we have a lot of producers that are known around the world, and those are producers that make things that are very high quality stuff, like B&O, Bang & Olufsen, and stuff like that. So I like to think of ourselves as
maybe orderly, organized, efficient.
Somehow that way.
What else could either of you add? I mean, again, somebody's asking you that doesn't know much about your country. I mean, I happen to know because I've traveled there myself. I've been able to see it and appreciate it. I have my impressions of it. But how do you describe it to other people who may not know anything about it?
I don't think we're as open as you are. We're a bit like mind your own business. I think of course,
just the
it's
cultural
not a good thing, but that's
It's in some ways both a more homogeneous society. That is, you share a lot of the similar experience, a similar, you could say ethnic or racial stock, but also, as a very rich culture and heritage. You've been there a long time. You have a clear identity. There's a sense of maintaining that, and so that might be a little bit more reserved. And of course, the culture we're in here, people come from everywhere. It's a mixture of different styles. You have to accept that, and also it also changes our culture, right? So interesting. And then here you are all examples of, again, the new generation, very mobile, very global. You come back, you've seen different parts of the world. It's going to impact what you choose to do, right? Anything else about, again, your impressions of what, or not impressions, really your descriptions of Denmark, things that you would want other people to know about? You describe maybe certain things that you do well. I mean, of course, we know Danish. They make good furniture. They make other, good quality goods. Pastry. Anything from also dairy goods, butter, which you export quite a bit, and pork. I mean, you're a major producer of pork products for such a small country, and roughly 5 million people, approximately. So it's a relatively small European state in Northern Europe. It's a maritime country. You're surrounded by water, so you've had a long connection. And here in Hawaii, of course, you cannot get away from the water. It surrounds us, and it's an important part of our reality here. Now, as you have now had several weeks here in Hawaii, I think you've been, tell us a little bit, our listeners, I mean, what are some impressions, either things that confirmed what you expected and maybe any surprises, things you did not expect?
I love the people. They're so nice and friendly, and they're curious. Like, when we're sitting in the bus on the way to school, from school, we normally speak Danish or Swedish. And people are like, "Oh, where are you from?" And they all guess like France or Germany.
Switzerland,
Switzerland. And then we say, "Well, we're from Denmark." "Oh, what's that?" But they're curious and they're friendly, and They just want to know, like, where are you from?
Yeah.
And some people know Denmark, and then like, oh my god, I've been there as well.
Yeah, I've seen this and that. And,
Also, I think it's kind of cool that everyone here, they have something to talk about, because, you know,
we like to talk story.
All Americans come from somewhere in Europe almost, you know, or, you know, Mexico as you do, but, you know, everyone comes from somewhere, and then they say, oh, I come from Germany, and that's like right next to Denmark, you know, and then there's like a little, you know, discussion
so
there.
people they want to share their story too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then want to know, well, our story. Yeah.
Well, why are you here? What are you doing?
Yeah,
exactly. Very interesting. And what about things that maybe you did not expect? Anything that you've been surprised by? And mind you, the good, the bad, the ugly, anything that you could share.
I must say, the bus system here in Hawaii is quite impressive, actually. Almost as good as in Denmark, because I've always learned, I've been to America several times, and I've never thought of, you know, public transportation as being in any way accessible or, you know, usable at all, because
you need a car to go anywhere.
Exactly. But here it doesn't seem to be, at least on Oahu, we were in Kauai, where we needed a car to get around. Because, but, you know, that was quite a positive experience, actually.
Oh, interesting. So, yeah, although you have to be prepared, like everything, you sometimes need a light jacket for the inside. It can be cold.
Yeah. Your air condition is like inside.
You come to Hawaii to wear a jacket, even inside classrooms, sometimes in buildings, right? It's a little puzzling.
We bring blankets and sweatshirts to class, and then we have like a huge bag with us to, like, when we go outside, just take it all off.
Oh, boy. Crazy.
It's so weird.
Any other impressions? Again, things that you could just quickly reflect.
I would say I was so surprised about how clean the streets are, especially where we live in Waikiki. Definitely compared to Copenhagen, because you see like a cigarette like everywhere, and gum and McDonald's paper and cups and so. And here it's like, so clean.
Well, we have these little menehune. They come out in the middle of the night and they clean it all up. Not quite. Well, it's an interesting impression. And of course, the area you are staying in Waikiki is, of course, our tourist center. And you know, I mean, obviously that's the part that, you know, has a large population concentrated and very interesting. Now, in terms of the society and culture, I mean, you know, we are, of course, part of the U.S. and yet we are, you know, obviously quite a rich, diverse culture here. We have many Asian, you know, cultures that are represented, but from all over. How do you see Hawaii in your mind? Clearly American or not clearly, or what?
I think it's clearly American.
Yeah, I think so too. I was surprised it was as American as it is.
Yeah, yeah. You know, most of the people, you see a lot of people here that are Caucasian, not Hawaiian natives, obviously, and it's quite astonishing to see how fast, you know, Hawaii's been a state for 55 years. How fast, you know, the Americans have like taken Hawaii under their wings somehow. Even though I know there's like discussions between Hawaiians they don't really want to be part of America.
Part of what you've been studying here, or a combination, let's talk a little bit about this program. It's what, you know, it's called the Pacific Crossroads, but it has a mixture of cultural studies, understanding, you know, certainly culture in a place like this is a very, you know, obvious thing to look carefully at. As well, some of it is helping to improve your English skills. Now, I've been a professor many years here, and I can assure you, Scandinavians can teach Americans more about our own mother tongue, if you will. You come with good skills, but of course you improve them. You know, write a little bit better and try to, you know, improve those skills. But the cultural studies, tell us a little bit about what are the kind of things you've been looking at and studying, and anything you can share.
I think we've been studying a lot about the Polynesian cultures and how, you know, it came to Hawaii. And then a little bit about how Hawaii became American and territorial America first, and then not suddenly, but then became a state in 1959, and you know, that entire process of including Hawaii and just the
a lot about Hawaiian history.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this is critical. As we take a short break in a moment, we'll come back, because, you know, you've been immersed in this to give you a snapshot. And this is critical, just as if anybody goes to a place like Denmark, and I travel quite a bit myself, I like to make sure I do a little research, a little study, understand more about that context. So we'll take a quick break right now, and we'll return in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll have more on the story after this short break. Aloha, and we're back, and we're live, and we're Think Tech. This is the Global Connection Show. I'm your host, Carlos Juarez. Delighted to be joined today by three young Danes. We've got Cecilie, Anders, and Caroline. And welcome back. Really great to just get your understanding of what you've been doing in this program. It's a Pacific Crossroads program here in Hawaii that brings students from Northern Europe, mostly Scandinavian countries like yours. And it's been a long tradition here. Hawaii has been a place that has welcomed people from all over the years. We are a melting pot on so many ways. And part of your program has been to study a little bit the story, the history. And maybe I turn to ask you, I mean, why does history matter? Or why, or maybe another way would be to ask, how does this understanding help you see Hawaii in a different way than if you just came on vacation for 1 week or 2 weeks? Obviously this is not a vacation, even though you're enjoying all the aspects of it, but you're here really as part of a study program to help you. And what is it that this study is helping you to unravel?
Yeah, I think that the fact that we just take part in trying to understand this culture is really the first major step, because you can come here on vacation and go to Waikiki, you learn basically nothing about Hawaii. If you go into the classroom, you don't even have to take like a program like we do. You just have to ask people around, and then you'll learn more about it. There's not much more to it, but it really helps you understand when you go out and you talk to people, especially people who've been here for a long time. Then you see why they say as they say, and yeah.
So part of the learning is simply in connecting with the community, talking to people, learning from them. Anything you could add again about what you're studying and either the relevance or the way in which it's helped you to better understand?
Well, we're talking a lot about because you are so diverse, talking a lot about how you react together, how to live together. Yeah. Even though we have traditions that are not the same. Yeah. And others, and
because it is a fascinating. I mean, again, Hawaii is at our core and the foundation, and certainly living here or visiting as you're doing now for the type of program, you need to understand that core, Polynesian culture and the native Hawaiian culture. It's fundamental. Many of the values, many of the important, aspects of what our culture is are grounded in that. From that, you then have the mixture of many cultures, of different groups that have come here, and many which maintain their traditions, and yet sometimes kind of modify them, adjust them, Hawaiianize them, Americanize them. And of course, Hawaii, long recognized as a place that has welcomed many people from all over. It has that long story. And even, you should know, certainly a couple centuries ago, we had a lot of whalers come from Norway, from other parts of Europe, part of the sort of fishing and whaling experience of the region. Today, you've got representation, and even in the case of Denmark, we've got Danes that live here and have made this their life, and so on. And I can probably tell you there's probably a few Hawaiians that are up there in Denmark. I mean, some who passed through, but even a few who've probably found a way to stay. Tell us a little bit more again about, I guess, pushing this issue of the impressions that you've gotten. I mean, something that might have caught some people's attention here is, we have some social and particularly cultural issues here that sometimes can be challenging or in your face. And I know we had conversations earlier. Some people are often a little bit surprised and shocked at homeless populations and why and how do we deal with that? I mean, how has this been something that you've looked at and asked about?
I think we have homeless people in Denmark as well, and here they're just a lot more, and they're a lot more direct in some way, because they appear even in downtown Honolulu on the streets and here on campus. Almost you walk past them every day and they ask you for money, and you learn to deal with it, and you deal with it basically the same way as we do in Denmark, but it's just a lot more, and it's sometimes overwhelming when you see whole groups of them, because they gather.
It's like a whole society on the street. I think I haven't, in Denmark the homeless people can be a little bit frightening. I get scared of them sometimes. That's just me. But here they're so friendly. They are. Even the homeless people are so friendly. Yeah.
They've got aloha spirit.
Yeah, they got aloha spirit.
Well, but it's a serious, I mean, we can joke, but of course it's not an entirely joking matter. There's a real serious challenge for us, and it remains one. And, you know, we do have some support that comes from the state, social service agencies, and many, many private organizations that also step in. But it remains a real challenge. It's a function both of the nature of our economy, and maybe, especially compared to Scandinavian countries, we have a much more limited sort of welfare state. We certainly are a welfare society, but we're not quite as generous. We're not quite as, let's say, the social safety net. It's more of an individualistic society here. And, you know, this homeless issue for us remains a challenge. Some people who obviously want and feel we should do more, others who feel that maybe the burden is on those people who've chosen it, and yet it's a very sensitive issue for us. It is a problem, and one that, you know, we continue to wrestle with. You know, turning for a moment to, you know, these type of programs have brought you here, and part of what you're doing, of course, as you described, is you're learning about culture. You know, what is culture? And maybe I would just turn to you to ask that question. I mean, how do you explain what culture is? And culture, I mean, there's not a single definition, but you know, in your mind, have you come to understand it a little bit better? And how would you explain to somebody else, you know, what culture refers to? What does it include?
Yeah, that was one of the goals I had with this program, because it's not only to learn about Hawaiian culture, but also to learn, because I plan on traveling more, you know, and then I want to learn about the cultures everywhere. So I kind of want to learn how to, you know, identify cultures and how to, I don't know.
On some level, it's also, you know, culture, it's, well, let me stick to this. You know, what is culture? I mean, we're talking about, but how do you describe it? What does it mean to you when somebody tells you culture?
How the culture manifests, basically. How you can see, you can either see culture as like values to people, or is what they do as tradition, or, you know, something like rituals, sorts of things.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we,
And the reason it might be important for us to understand is that we live in a world where increasingly we're in contact with people from other cultures. Again, very real here, but even a country like Denmark, you've always been a global trading country on some level, but even today you have more people coming through, you have opportunities to see others, and culture is oftentimes it can be a source of conflict or tension when people, you know, find that. I mean, you know, Denmark, you know, a very peaceful country that it's been for most of its modern history. I can recall some years back some major violence happened. There was a famous artist who had drawn some pictures of Muhammad, and was very, suddenly you had, you know, protests in Danish embassies around the world, and this, you know, this suddenly just spotlights how culture, you know, while we can describe it as these things that make up different societies, the values, norms, beliefs, all of that, there are often tensions that might arise from that. Now, beyond that, why do you study culture? Some of it is to help you negotiate and understand. I mean, if you're doing business, if you're interacting with other people, it requires you to understand where they come from, what, you know, how they see the world, their ways of doing things, right? So you have to learn to be, in some ways, you have to have certain skills in identifying that and negotiating it. And if you had to describe culture again, I'm pushing this a little farther, but what you know, is culture something that's fixed, or is it something that evolves? How would you describe it?
I think it evolves.
Yeah, it evolves, definitely, because it changes over time.
And are there ways that you could
I think in Denmark we have a very fixed culture, because, you know, it doesn't change very much in Denmark. Here in the United States, everyone is from different countries, or at least their ancestors are from different countries. But in Denmark, we're all, most of the population in Denmark is from Denmark and has been for their entire lives, and their families are from Denmark. So we all do it in basically the same way. But, you know, as you say, we become increasingly, affected by the cultures around us, and they come to our countries and we learn from them and we adjust. But I think it's slower here, slower in Denmark than it is here, because here you have a lot of cultures.
It's more of a clash, a mixture.
Exactly.
And yet, again, part of what often we describe as this sense of the aloha spirit, this openness, part of it is that with this mixture of cultures, you know, you can either take one of two options. You're either going to resist it and fight it, or you have to be able to embrace it. And clearly, you know, in general, we see more openness to it here, and more tolerance, and that both becomes part of our culture, but it's also what invites others to come. I mean, when you come and see that people come back because they enjoy that, and it's often noted by many who come here that the spirit of generosity, of love, and appreciation of other people's ways of seeing the world, that becomes part of it. Back to this question again about why culture matters. I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of whether you've been able to develop, in your mind, either skills or strategies that help you be more open-minded, more appreciative of cultures. Are there other things that you find yourself thinking about differently than maybe others?
Not differently. I think it's very important that you have an understanding of other cultures. You don't have to agree with it at all, but an understanding, because then the clashes won't come as well.
So
also, if you are traveling to another country, I think you should be the one embracing the other culture, because you don't want to come there and interfere with their ways of living, or at least not too much, because of course it's impossible not to at all. But you know, you don't want to, I don't know, like talk down to their culture, or like look down at their culture, because you can't say that your culture is better when you are in their country, basically. So I think that's very important to remember when you're around the world. Yeah,
to be respectful of others, and whether how it may be different from what you know, but you have to begin from the idea that, well, this is how they do it, and it's probably a function of their history, their context. And I think critical thing that you are learning as well is, you don't realize this, but just listening skills. Observing, learning from others, and sometimes keeping your mouth a little quiet, but obviously you need to engage, you have to talk, no doubt, but I'm just saying that I think you've expressed it in a different way, that when you're in another place, be mindful of how they are, and be respectful of that. All right, very good. And these are skills, again, that are vital, because again, as people who live in a global society, I mean, it's not going to go away. We're going to continually have this interaction and contact, and the social media and sort of technologies now connect us in ways that you may be a business person, or somebody working in a engineer or some other plant in Denmark, but you're dealing with providers that are in other parts of the world, consumers, etc., and you've got to understand how they do business or how they see the world.
Right?
Exactly. Very good. Now, I guess along those same lines, I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do in this program is really to help you navigate that. And one way is, how do you learn about culture? Well, you can come to the place as you've done. You can see it in different places, maybe through television or movie or books, or you can meet other people. And so I'm just curious, from your own individual experiences, I mean, how do you learn about other places? You travel quite a bit. You go to places. Are there things that you do, strategies you do to get information?
Talk with people.
I talk with people, definitely. Try to get friends everywhere. And that's how you learn, I think, and learn to communicate with other people from different kind of countries. Like a Dane and American is so completely different. That's how I learn about the cultures. Just talk to the people. Conversations.
Also,
I feel like you could read so much. You can only read so much about a culture. You have to go there. You have to talk to someone. You have to experience it, because else it won't stick with you.
Well, this is fascinating, and we'll continue this conversation. We'll take a moment right now to have a short break. I'm Carlos Juarez here at Global Connections, part of the Think Tech Hawaii series, and we're joined today by 3 young Danes, Cecilie, Anders, and Caroline. And I want to ask you to just come back with us. Stay tuned. We'll have more on the story in just a moment.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the Think Tech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, we're back and we're live. I'm Carlos Juarez, and this is Global Connections, part of the Think Tech Hawaii series. And we're joined today by 3 young Danes having a great conversation, learning about some of their impressions, some of their understanding. These are young, basically future leaders of their own countries, but global leaders in their own way, because they've embarked on a journey that's taken them far, far from home, way in Northern Europe to the middle of the Pacific. And here in Hawaii, you're gaining valuable skills, skills about how to understand culture, people, and sort of negotiate these things. And you know, I want to take a moment to turn back to your own respective country of Denmark. I mean, here's a small state, you know, has a long, rich heritage, and it, you know, despite being relatively small with 5 million people, I mean, you've managed to carve out certain areas of, if you will, expertise or you know, very high value items. We often associate Denmark with those famous Danish pastries, as they would call them. And you know, so maybe my first question would be, how is it, I mean, who has the secret? What is it? I mean, you don't talk about Swedish pastries or Norwegian pastries, you know, German, they all have them, but somehow the Danes have, I mean, what is it that has given you this expertise?
I think it's part of our history. We've just been doing it for ages.
You've perfected it.
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow your butter is better than anybody else's.
Our butter's good.
And that's where it all starts, right? But even, I think more to the point, I mean, like a lot of these other areas, whether we might be talking about Danish furniture or some specialized, you know, either, you know, equipment or you mentioned the Bang & Olufsen. I mean, this is a very high value, high end, you know, stereo systems and music things. There's a very good emphasis on just quality control and, you know, doing things very carefully, very well. And it reminds me, I've had the privilege of visiting Denmark on several occasions, and it's a country that leaves you with quite an impression that everything is nice and orderly. Somebody thought about everything, that, you know, everything is kind of in the right place, and I'm always impressed by that. You have another word that has always intrigued me, and it's I don't know the exact spelling, I'm going to try my best at it, but it's a word, as I understand it, that's kind of the closest English definition would be coziness, and it's hygge. And so tell us briefly in your own mind, because I mean, for our listeners, some of them who've had the privilege of going to a place like Denmark may know this. I can tell you I've seen it, and it's very comfortable. What does this word mean, and what does it mean in terms of how it actually becomes what it is?
Well, to me it means like eating Danish pastry or cake, or drinking some tea with your family or friends, or just sitting together.
Usually just sitting together with your family, with your best friends, someone, maybe you watch a movie in the night, but something, everything is just right. You've got the right food, you got the right people, very usually comfortable. You're at home.
At home. But a lot of young Danes, especially girls, go out to cafes and have coffee or lunch.
And do you still have this hygge there?
And we still have this hygge, it's just like getting together, just talking a lot, having fun, just
nothing on the
catching
up.
Catching up, it's like catching up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, of course, the middle of a dark winter like right now, you have to be indoors, and so a lot of time on your hands. And I think this other sense I get is like, well, if you're going to be stuck indoors, let's at least make it comfortable. Let's get the right food. Let's get the right people together, the right tea or whatever drink it might be. But you know, more than that, it's just part of your culture again. The sense of a pride in, you know, making sure everything is just right, and the little extras, you know, hospitality. I find it fascinating. And you know, back to this question of your own country. I mean, again, a remarkable emphasis on just, you know, doing things, putting a lot of effort into it well, and this has helped you establish a very important reputation for that. The furniture is another thing, classic, you know, Danish, you know, both the style and the quality has always been, you know, something people have looked to all over the world. And, you know, I mentioned this briefly earlier, but, you know, you're a country that's relatively small. You don't have huge forests, so you have to find the product, which is often wood, bring it there, but you've got obviously...
We process it, we don't,
you don't grow wood at all. Somebody has to go and negotiate with the Poles or the Latvians or whoever that you're buying it from, and yet you bring it in, and then you've got master craftsmen, then you've got designers that somehow know, and then marketers who can then distribute it. And so here's again a good example of something that you've managed to perfect quite well. And so these are things again that give you a sense of your own identity. What is it to be Danish? Well, we're proud of X and Y. I want to maybe ask and turn briefly to you know, thinking about you're at a critical juncture in your lives, relatively young, you've finished your high school, you're kind of in early stages of career interests, and I don't want to, you know, you may not have it all clear, but I'd like to turn to you. I mean, where do you see yourselves in 5 or 10 years? Where are some of your interests? And, you know, you've got a country that has, you know, some opportunities for you, and you've got obviously a foundation there. Tell us a little bit about where your interests lie. What do you see yourself doing?
Well, I see myself living in another country, actually. I would love to be here in the States or in England.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think I'll probably be studying in like 5 or 10 years. I hope to be a doctor sometime, but yeah, everything's open, so I'm not really sure. But
but you'll be a doctor with good understanding of the world. And,
maybe do some, maybe not even in Denmark, you know.
Yeah,
I'll probably take my education in Denmark because I don't have to pay for it there. But you know, I feel like it's a great opportunity to get around.
And I would definitely live in the States.
Well, who's going to be left behind? Your grandparents or what?
Our parents.
You can't all leave. I mean, you say that now, believe me, once you get married and have that first child, you'll be...
But it's because, like, what I want to do in life, I want to be international. And the opportunity here in America is a lot bigger than it is in Denmark. Because I want to be like in hotels and restaurants and in for like the tourists, and it's just a lot bigger in the States. Than in Denmark.
That's a fair point. It is true, and you know, I think part of it is, again, the world that we're in is so interconnected and so global in so many ways. Moreover, you gain from that experience, and yet I will tell you, and this happens in all over the world. I mean, you have opportunities. Maybe you will work, but you'll find yourself pulled back by your culture, your family, and frankly, having the experience abroad, maybe right now it's a short-term thing, maybe you'll go and spend more time, but coming back, it's something that also brings value back home, how things were done somewhere else. When you're describing hotels, I've been in Denmark. There's some pretty good quality hotels and good service and good food. The best bacon I've eaten anywhere. But this is quite fascinating because you have clearly a yearning that's universal. And part of it is that once you've seen the world, you're never the same person. And I wonder. I mean, some of you have traveled already quite a bit. This is obviously a big venture from your home country. But if you had to describe to somebody, this idea that once you've left and gotten out of that comfort zone, you're never going to be the same person. How do you elaborate on that, or what would you say to that?
I think, right now we're like in the state of mind that everything is possible, I think, because we're like conjured to come over here.
It was a big step.
It was a big step.
It's like across the world. It's like on the other side of the world.
I don't know, I kind of feel like doing all this travel, I'll probably end up staying in Denmark, even though I've been all around the world. But as you say, I become a different person, and I think I can teach people, maybe not teach people, but at least give something from where I've been to the people I meet, and they may not be Danish, but I can tell, okay, this is how they do it in Hawaii, and they take everything slow and hang loose, and and that's something I think that will stick to. I hope will stick to other people, because it sticks to me, and I hope that the fact that I've been around the world and seen a lot of cultures, that those cultures may affect other people as well, because I don't want to. I don't want to do this for me, but I want to be able to tell people about it in a positive way.
Well, much as you all described earlier, how did you learn about it? I mean, it's that exchange of ideas, sharing, and you come back, and part of your own re-entry when you do go back is to do that, to share, tell some of the story, what you've seen, what you've liked. Well, we're going to come back, and in the final segment we'll have a chance to wind down some of this. We're taking a short break right now. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Carlos Juarez. This is Global Connections, and we're joined today by three young Danes, Cecilie, Anders, and Caroline. And so join us in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Aloha. I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Aloha, and we're back, and we're live. I'm Carlos Juarez. This is Global Connections in the ThinkTech series, and today our show is a great opportunity to learn some insights from three young Danes that are joining us. We've got Cecilie, Anders, and Caroline, and thank you again for this opportunity, really to get some insights, some reflections. You've come to us all the way from Denmark. You're part of this young new generation, and yet balancing both who you are, your identities, and those identities are changing, because you're going to go back as sort of more worldly in some some respects. You know, one of the fascinating things about Denmark, and you know, you have opportunities as you continue. Denmark is deeply connected to the world in many ways, whether it's through the trade of you know, products that you make, but even a lot of, and this is true of most of Scandinavia in general, you have a lot of development assistance in parts of Africa, parts of Asia. There's a lot of work going on with NGOs, private organizations. Even the Danish government has, you know, support, and you all have opportunities if you're interested in that. And I wonder, you know, if you might, you know, share with us and our listeners, I mean, this notion of do good. I mean, again, it's in some ways it's embedded in the Scandinavian culture, a sense of looking out for others, a sense for, you know, giving back. And you live in very, you know, wealthy societies that have, you know, sort of in some ways reached a level where you can focus on quality of life, you can do good. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, are you aware of some of these opportunities or issues, or Denmark's role in particularly the developing world?
Yeah, we talk much about it because it's included in our taxes. So every time it comes up, they have to like say it. It's not really our decision what the money goes to, but we like to be informed about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, as you say, we are a pretty wealthy people, and a lot of us feels like that, you know, some people don't have it as we do, and like we do at home, we have like a safety net for even the poorest people in Denmark. So we maybe want to do some good for people around the world as well, especially for those who have nothing at all. So
yeah, so helping with technology, helping with, you know, development assistance in some way. And
usually sustainable, you know, so they can, maybe we help them build like their own garden so they can help themselves.
That's right. So it's not just sending money, but actually help them to develop into, provide, you know, solutions and options.
Schools, we do a lot of schools.
And of course, you know, we mentioned some other, you know, aspects of the Danish, let's say, economy, and one of them is even developing alternative energies. I mean, Denmark is quite an important story in terms of shifting 40 years ago from a dependence on import of oil. Today you are practically self-sufficient in, you know, recycling, you know, all types of things, getting energy from wind, getting it from the ocean, and here in Hawaii, I mean, we have these opportunities, and we're certainly addressing those, but we look to a country like Denmark as a great model of you know, some of those opportunities. Several years ago, I remember we hosted a visit here from the ambassador of Denmark in Washington, Jensen, I can't remember his first name yet, of course a Dane, but part of what he was doing was, you know, we've got wind farms here that are, you know, in some of our islands, and bringing some of that technology to help understand, and he gave a great presentation to us about this, the story of Denmark. You know, you've got other things, I mean, whether it's, and actually our listeners, our viewers, more specifically our viewers may not realize, but we've got a nice castle in our backdrop here. And this is, what's the name of it again?
Kronborg.
Kronborg,
and you know, some of it comes from the story of Hamlet, written by Shakespeare. Or is this a place that's known for that, or do you have some of it in your own folklore?
Much known for Hamlet.
And tourists in Denmark goes to see.
Exactly.
Excellent.
It is a very impressive castle to see.
No, it's not the prettiest.
No, not at all.
I think it looks beautiful right
but
here.
we have much prettier.
From the sea, it's right out to the sea, and there's not many castles that are that. So I think it's pretty in that sense.
Nice. And if you had to, you know, in some ways, you know, tell somebody, again, I asked earlier about, you know, what would you describe about Denmark, but let's say you're trying to inspire someone to come to Denmark. What are the things that you might ask them to see? What things would you...
All the castles.
The castles.
Because we are a country who's really proud of our royal family. They are like the thing of Denmark, the royal family. And every Dane respect the family, and we love the family. So definitely the castles.
So you have, essentially you're a constitutional monarchy, or you've got a monarchy, and you're led by, the head of state is Queen Margaret?
The second.
Margaret. And she's been in power about 40 years, I believe.
Since 73.
73, so a little over 40 years now. You've got an heir apparent in the form of a prince who may be a king.
He will be king. He will be king.
Frederick, okay. And, you know, very interesting that you note, I mean, here, part of your heritage, your culture, you've got this monarchy, well respected, well liked, and what kind of role do they play? I mean, from your vantage point, what is it that they do?
Appearance.
Yeah, it is a representation of Denmark in the entire world. Legally, they have to sign every law, I think, but they can't really.
They don't say this. They don't say no.
Yeah. They can't say no. Basically, the Queen has to sign. I think she meets with the Prime Minister every Tuesday or something. So
what's on your agenda?
But I think that's like the only job she still has, but other than representing Denmark all over, and I think they're really good at that, and I think most Danes are pretty proud that we have a monarchy.
And this is quite interesting because it's fair to say there are some other monarchies that sometimes get more attention for scandal or notoriety, or the young prince that just drives around in his Ferrari or something. You've got a more modest and probably obviously well-liked family.
I think we got a pretty modest family because none of them have had like scandals or everything.
They drive
the kids are not old enough.
Very well. Interesting. Well, again, and this is important because the story and the culture that you described in Denmark, I mean, this is part of it, who you are and what makes you Danes distinct from other even neighbors that may look alike, but you've got your own identity. And maybe a curious question, you're part of this region of Northern Europe we would call Scandinavia. It includes some neighboring countries there. You've got Norway, you've got Sweden, you've got nearby Finland, and of course you border Germany to the south. But particularly in the Scandinavian realm, how would you describe the differences? And I don't want you to put you on the spot of this, but you've got Sweden, you've got Denmark, you've got Norway. How do Danes describe your neighbors? What are they like? How are they different from
Norway
you?
They're like the rich. They have all the oil. They have the entire North Sea. There's a lot of oil there. So the Norwegians are really rich. I think that's just, I don't know if it's just my opinion, but
and they weren't always, mind you. They found the oil, but
exactly.
the grandparents and before.
Yeah, we gave up Norway, so.
And we have this really mean stereotype of Swedes that they are the ones that drinks a lot. But I think actually we are the ones that drinks the most.
Yeah, I think like Denmark is especially known for the party people, especially like the young. When we are talking to young Americans, they're all like, "Oh, you can drink when you're 16." So
it is probably a bit scandalous
we are
after American standards, and the Finnish are just like crazy people from the north. It's cold in Finland all year long.
So is that reflected
they go
in their
to the sauna
personalities?
to get in like 100-degree sauna, and then they go out and swim in ice water.
So they're crazy, just
they're crazy.
Okay. Very well. Now, fascinating, and had the opportunity to visit now many times. Actually, when I first went in the early 90s, I'll never forget, 1992 was a very critical year for Denmark. They had rejected the Maastricht Treaty, which was initially, and then they would sign it later, but they were very proud of saying no. And they also won the Euro champion that year. I was there that summer, which was like a big party, let's say.
It still is.
Quite exciting. Still celebrating it.
Since, so
21 years and you're still milking it. But it was fascinating to see that, and I guess just what's interesting to me is how you remain a small state and yet still kind of keep your identity separate, and very proud to keep that. It's a fascinating story because much like you've come to learn here about us, I mean, we have a unique story here in our state of Hawaii. We have our own monarchy as part of a heritage that's an important part of it, and yet we have this puzzle. We're part of this bigger, larger entity. We are certainly, as you described earlier, American in some level, but distinct in its own way. I think as you move ahead, and certainly as you return back, you've got to help share some of that story, some of the things you've learned, some of what you come away with. I think for us, it's a great opportunity because you give us, a chance to think more about who we are, and this is important. Just as when we travel there, I mean, I'm always fascinated when Danes go out of the way to help take me to visit a castle, to go do some of the sightseeing there, because you're very proud of that heritage and that story. And at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here, this cultural exchange. It's a life-changing experience, and you all go back as sort of revitalized and never quite the same. I often note that when you see the world, you don't just learn about that place, you learn about your own values and your own home, what you miss and what you value. And maybe as we get near the end now, I mean, if you had to say what are the one or two things that you miss most being away right now from home? Is it a food? Is it a person? Is it a
It is a food. I miss the
some
bread
dark bread.
Our dark bread.
Yes.
Definitely,
They don't have that at all in America, so.
Yes, exactly. Well, we have these things called Twinkies that come in a little bag. Not quite,
not quite the same.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I hope while you do miss that, it'll be there waiting for you. But hopefully your palate has opened. You've tried some new foods, some different things that you clearly will make it very different. In Copenhagen, I've always loved because I eat. Well, I love all kinds of different foods, but one of my favorite Indian foods is the place I go visit there. That's quite good, and just in general, the food is of a high quality, very tasty. Well, we're at the end of our program. I really want to thank you. An opportunity to just learn more about you, what you've been doing here, your own stories. We basically have had a chance to really cover a lot of things, and this is a program, the Pacific Crossroads, that brings students from Scandinavia, mostly from Denmark. We have a few Swedes that we throw in just to mix it up a little, but this is a great, I guess, a great example of the global connections that we bring here in Hawaii, and this show has been, I think, a way to do that. I want to thank all of you for being here. Our guests we're joined here by Anders, Caroline, and Cecilie, and thanks to many others who make this show possible. We have Ian Montana, who's our production manager, communication director, Chrissy Goffeden, and of course Jay Fidel, who helps put it all together somehow. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for listening. Think Tech will be back here as usual. We've got programs throughout the week, so stay tuned. And if you want to get any of our daily emails or media program advisories, just check thinktechhawaii.com and you'll be able to join and get a list there. You can find any of these episodes on podcasts, and remember that we broadcast live as well, weekdays here at 2 and at 4. You can go to our Facebook page if you want to like us as well. And again, just thanking our guests that have joined us today and wishing you all well for the rest of your short stay here and a safe return back home. And of course, to our listeners, look forward to seeing you here on our next show, Global Connections. Aloha.